What's going on, guys? It's Dem here and welcome to another episode of DemmSec. Okay, so I thought for this video I'd revisit an old tutorial I did, and you may remember it, my how to install Backtrack in Virtualbox. And seeing as Kali's just been released, I thought I'd go ahead and basically remake that tutorial but using Kali Linux, because the installation's a bit different. But I also thought I'd include VMware Workstation in there, because personally I've moved on to VMware Workstation. I much prefer the way VMware Workstation works, and I like the added features. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Virtualbox, and I think it's great and it's absolutely amazing to say it's a free tool. But sometimes you need to move on to VMware because it has some more virtual networking tools, I guess you could call them, which really do benefit me and you who use virtualization technologies. So I'm not going to talk anymore, I'm just going to get right into it. I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so as I mentioned, this first part is actually just going to be how to install it in VMware Workstation. I'm sure the process is going to be the same in the other VMware products, but yeah, we're going to go with VMware Workstation first. I know I've already made a kind of video like this, how to install Backtrack in Virtualbox, but I'm going to make one how to install Kali Linux in both of those products, just because I think some of the people who view my videos may not understand how to install it, and I'll just give them a bit of help, but I'm going to run through this as quick as possible. So in VMware, just go to File, New Virtual Machine, and it brings you up with this window. We're just going to go with typical, because we don't need any special, I guess, peripherals or anything like that. We're going to go with installer disk image file, and as you can see here, it's already selected my Kali Linux, but you just go to browse and find where it is on your computer, double click it, and that's fine. If you haven't already, I'll actually just cut in here where to download and how to download Kali Linux. Okay, so to get Kali Linux, you're just going to head over to kali.org or www.kali.org. This is the official Kali Linux website. And then you've got two options. You can either go down here and click downloads, or up here and click downloads. Either way, it gets you to the same place. So you just go ahead and click downloads here, and as always, it's going to ask you for your name and your email, but if you don't want to, no thanks, just go to download. If you do want to put that information in, that's fine. They're not going to do anything bad with it. They're probably just going to give you some update information and stuff like that. I'll probably sign up to that at some point myself. So there's only one version of Kali currently available, so you just go ahead and select that. You've got no other choice. And then what you're going to do is a few options here. These two here are for ARM-based devices, so if you're using a Raspberry Pi or a Chromebook or something like that, you'd go with one of them. You can also run this on Android, I think. I think you can run it under like a VM under Android, but don't quote me on that. So the two we're going to be focusing on are right here. i386 is actually 32-bit, so if you're running a 32-bit machine or a 64-bit machine which doesn't have Intel VT, you're going to go for that. If not, if you've got an Intel VT machine with a 64-bit processor, go ahead and select AMD 64. For me, I'm going to go with AMD 64. If you're not sure either way, if you can't work out which system you have, always go with 32-bit, because 32-bit is always going to work. Sorry if you heard any vibrating there, I just got a quick phone call. So we got to picking 32-bit or 64-bit. As I mentioned, if you are unsure, just go with 32-bit. It's the surefire one. 32-bit will work on the 64-bit platforms, no problem. Then here you've only got one option. You've only got the official image. In the future, there will be other types of images here. People will build specific versions for, I don't know, specific platforms or with specific tools in them. But for now, there's only official. And then you can choose GNOME or none. Obviously we want to go with GNOME, otherwise you don't have a window manager. None would be good for a Raspberry Pi, where you're probably not going to be loading up a GUI, you're probably just going to be running it from the command line. But we're not, we're going to be running a window manager. So select GNOME, and then we want the ISO. We could go with a VMware image here, but obviously the VMware image only works inside of VMware, and we want to install it inside VirtualBox and VMware. And then you can either do a direct download or a torrent. I always go for the torrents on these things, just because they seem to be more reliable. I haven't actually tested the reliability of the Kali Linux download site, but personally I always go for the torrents, and you also help speed up other people's torrents by seeding. So you just go to torrent or direct, hit download. If it's torrent, load it into your favourite torrent downloading application. If you're doing it direct, then just hit download and you'll have the ISO straight off. Okay, so once you've got it downloaded, you just go ahead and find it there and select it. Then we're just going to hit next. It won't know what operating system it is because VMware won't have a chance to check it yet. But all you're going to have to do is hit Linux and then choose Ubuntu 64-bit's fine, depending on what version of Kali Linux you've got. And that's another thing that's really important. If you've got a 32-bit processor, you can only run 32-bit VMs. If you've got a 64-bit processor, it doesn't necessarily mean you can run 64-bit VMs. It depends on whether you've got something called Intel-VT technology on your processor. And I'll just cut in now where to find out if you've got that. Okay, so it's pretty simple to find out whether your processor can support 64-bit virtual machines, also known as the Intel VT technology. What you're going to do is head over to this website here. I'll leave the link in the description as always. And you just go head over to this side here where it says download the latest release and select the right one that you want. I'd recommend going for the setup because it's a cool tool to have on your system and it's pretty useful. Obviously, I'll pick the English, you can pick Chinese if that's your native language. It's completely up to you. I've actually already installed it, but it's easy. You just download it, next, finish, say no to all the toolbars because it does offer you the ask toolbar, and you don't want that. So once that's downloaded, we can go ahead and go to Start and go to CPU TAC Z. And I'm sure quite a lot of you already have this program if you're into gaming or building PCs or anything. You'll probably already have this tool. It'll just prompt me there, and it might take a couple of seconds to load up because obviously it's checking your CPU and everything. And this is the main window you'll get. You may notice that my clock speed and voltage will change all the time. That's with Intel's speed step technology. It's silly. I'd like it to stay constant, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect me in any way. So this instructions part here is what you're interested in, and it'll list off all kinds of instructions which look like just random letters to most people, but what you're actually looking for is VT-X. If your processor has VT-X, then you can run 64-bit virtual machines. If you try to run a 64-bit virtual machine and it says there's a problem and you do have this, make sure that in your BIOS it's actually switched on, because by default, like my BIOS on my Asus Sabertooth C77 motherboard, it was disabled, and I don't know why they do that. I don't know whether it's to protect the user in some way. Either way, it's kind of silly that they do, but most of the time it's disabled. So what you're going to have to do is go into your BIOS, and I'm not going to show you how to do that because everyone's BIOS is different, but you just need to enable that, and it's pretty simple. Okay, just another word about the Intel VT-X technology right here. In the instructions, if you have an AMD processor, which you can see I've obviously got an Intel processor, but if you've got an AMD processor, it won't say VT-X, well, ever, because obviously that's the Intel technology. But if you have an instruction on here that's called AMD-V, then it's exactly the same thing. You can go ahead and install 64-bit virtual machines. Just thought I'd add that there because obviously not everyone runs Intel. Okay, so if you have got Intel VT, go ahead and choose 64-bit on your download as well, but if not, go ahead and hit the 32-bit version here and also download the 32-bit version. The 32-bit version is just the Ubuntu without the 64-bit on the end. So we'll just hit next here, and it asks you to choose a virtual machine name. So I'm just going to put YouTube Kali Linux test, like that. Hit next, and I recommend about 40 gig here. And as I mentioned on the old VirtualBox tutorial, it won't actually use the whole 40 gig at once in the maximum size is just how big you want the VM to get at its maximum. It uses the space as and when it needs it. So if you only end up using like 5 gig, it'll only take up 5 gig of space on your hard drive. So I'd choose about 40 gig because that way you can have all your updates and everything for backtrack and whatever else you may be doing. Just go hit next, and we're actually going to hit customize hardware here. So when picking how much RAM you want, I'd say if it's the only virtual machine you're going to be running and you're not going to be running much in the background, you can go ahead and go with half of your resources. So if I put that up to 8 gig there. So I've got 16 gigs of RAM, so I don't want to go over that, obviously, because I don't have the RAM to go over it. And if you end up with memory swapping, that's where it swaps memory to the hard drive, and it becomes extremely slow and your PC will start freezing up. And what I actually I'd like to do is go a bit under, and I'll go to about 6 gig, right about there. That way I've just got an extra 2 gig for my computer. Also, what you want to do is check how many cores your processor has, and mine has 4, but it actually has 8 threads, but I'm going to go ahead with 4 cores there. I think it's the same rule really. If you've got a processor with 2 cores, you only want it to use 1, you don't want it to fully utilise your CPU, otherwise your actual host operating system will slow down, and then everything slows down at that point. Then you're going to go to network adapter, and you just select bridged here, but what I've actually done is I've got a custom network adapter that's bridged because I've actually got multiple network cards in my computer. But if you hit bridged, it'll automatically go ahead fine, but I'm just going to hit custom and VMnet 2 just because mine's different. Just going to hit close there, and as you can see, all the settings we've just set up are fine, and we're just going to go ahead and hit finish, and that will have our VM ready, and it'll automatically boot up. So it's going to boot off the disk straight away, and you could go into a live instance here if you wanted to, but obviously we want to go for the install, so we'll just click into the VMware window and go down to the install option and hit enter. And this is going to bring up the Kali Linux installation. So if you've ever seen a Ubuntu installation, this is going to be very similar, but obviously we're not running Ubuntu, we're running Kali Linux, which is based on Debian. So we're just going to go for English, United Kingdom, British English. Obviously you change those for wherever you are. And this will just go through the installation. It shouldn't ask you for anything else other than this. I'm just going to pause the recording here because obviously you don't want to sit through an installation, and if any other prompts come up, I'll just let you I'll start the recording again and show you them. Okay, so this is going to ask you for a host name for your virtual machine, and this doesn't really matter so long as it isn't the same as any other host name of a running machine on your network. So I'm just going to go for YouTube Kali Linux. I think you're allowed dashes in this, but that's about it. No, you can have capital letters, I think. Maybe not, but no spaces, no special characters, anything like that. And it's just what the computer's identified as on the network. Domain name, unless you're on a Windows domain, this doesn't matter, so you can just hit enter, forget about it. And it's going to ask you to set the root password. If you remember in Backtrack, it actually automatically set this, but this wants you to pick one when you install, so make sure you get it right twice, and then this is going to go into the main installation. I'll just pause again and I'll come back when we're finished. Okay, so this has brought up the partition disks manager. What you want to do is just hit guided, use entire disk. Personally, I wouldn't mess with this unless you're trying to do some dual booting, but if you're trying to do dual booting, you know what you're talking about. Unless you guys want me to do a dual booting tutorial in the future, which I probably won't do because a lot of you people will end up ruining your Windows installations, and I don't want to be responsible for that. But guided use entire disk is fine, especially in a virtual environment, and it'll ask you to select a drive. As you can see there, we've got our 40 gig drive that we allocated inside VMware. We're just going to click all files in one partition. You can actually have a slash separate partitions for different home directories, but we'll just put them all in one partition, it's fine. Then hit finish partitioning and write to disk, and then yes. We'll come back when this is finished installing. Okay, so during the installation you'll probably get this pop-up, and it's going to ask you whether you want to configure the package manager by downloading some files off the internet. Obviously, if you are connected to the internet, go ahead and hit yes. If not, click no. I'm going to hit yes. It'll ask you for HTTP proxy. If you don't have one, obviously don't put anything. Hit enter, and that'll go off and download the packages that it needs. And we'll be back once it's finished. Okay, so this should be the final question you get asked during the installation. It's going to ask you whether you want to install grub bootloaders to the master boot record. Always hit yes to this, unless you have a different bootloader, but you'll know that. If you don't, always hit yes to this, otherwise you won't be able to boot your newly installed operating system. So I'm just going to hit yes, and that's going to go ahead and install it. And hopefully I'll be able to pause now, and when the installation's done, we'll be able to move on to Virtualbox. Okay, so the installation is finally complete. It only took about 10 to 20 minutes. May take longer on slower computers, but it doesn't take long at all. Linux installations never take very long. Just going to hit continue here, and it's going to reboot the machine. And it's also going to eject the disk, which if you look down in the bottom right hand corner, it's already gone ahead and done. Okay, so now it's just rebooting, and I'm not going to click anything here because it'll automatically select the top one, and this is going to go ahead and boot up Kali Linux. And something you are going to notice that's different from Kali Linux, I may have noticed, mentioned this in my review, is it actually boots into like a windowed login, which I think is, yeah, I think that's completely new to Backtrack. So what you're going to do here is hit other, and you're going to go for username, root, password, whatever you set in the installation. Now the installation is complete, and you can go ahead and run whatever you need to. I'm not going to go through doing all the updates, you can just look back on the previous video for that. So let's get into VirtualBox. Okay, so we've got VirtualBox loaded up now, and we're going to be installing Kali Linux inside it, just like we did in VMware. So like VMware, we're just going to start off by creating a new virtual machine, and I'm just going to name this Kali. It automatically chooses Linux in 2.6. We're actually going to go with Debian 64-bit, because that's the ISO I've got. It's Debian and it's 64-bit. I'm going to hit next, and it's saying recommended memory is that, which is nowhere near enough. We'll say 6000, close enough to 60 GB. We're going to create a virtual hard disk, and it's saying its recommended size is 8 GB, which is nowhere near enough. So we're going to put that up to 40 like I did before, and as I mentioned on the virtual VMware even, is it won't use all this at once, it's only the maximum size of that device. Okay, so that VM's now created, and VMware's a little, VirtualBox is a little different, where it doesn't tell you to select an ISO before it boots up. You actually start it up on, you select an ISO on the first boot up. Something I will mention is, I said VTX technology to do 64-bit VMs. If you also have AMD-V, same thing. Okay, so it's right control to get the mouse out of the VM. Remember that, otherwise you'll end up doing all kinds of stuff trying to get your mouse out of the VM. Just go hit next. It's going to tell me to select a ISO or a host drive, so I'm just going to go here. If I just copy that into there, hit start, and then this will start up the Kali Linux live disk. Do not show. Okay. Capture, and we're just going to go to the install option as before, and from here the install's exactly the same, so we'll just run through it super quick. VirtualBox will come up with all kinds of notifications and stuff. Just hit next or hit OK, it doesn't really matter. So as before, select your language, your country, territory or area, and your keyboard type. Very simple. As before, we're going to select a host name. We're just going to call this Virtualbox Cali. Don't need a domain name unless you're on a Windows domain. Root password. As I said, I'm not going through in as much detail on this one, just trying to get through it as quick as possible. I'm going to use the entire disk. It's exactly the same process as VMware. Okay, so we're going to get the same question again. Do we want to use a network mirror? Yes. HTTP proxy information. I got that wrong last time as well. Obviously going to leave this blank again unless you have a HTTP proxy. It's pretty simple. Another question we've just seen from the VMware tutorial. Do we want to install Grub? Yes, of course we do. We can't boot without it. Okay, so now the installation is complete. Just hit continue. It's going to eject the disk and reboot. It's also going to run this command. Running remove live packages. This turns the system into, well, stops it being a live system, so everything's actually saved rather than destroyed on reboot. Okay, so it's now rebooting. And as before, I'm not going to click anything, not going to tap anything, just going to let it boot into Kali. Okay, so as before, hit over, username, root, password, whatever you set during the installation. And there we go, the installation is now complete. Something I will mention about Virtualbox is it doesn't ask you to set up a network adapter during the installation, and by default it uses NAT. If you're going to be using any kind of hacking, quote unquote, operating system, you're going to want to change this to bridge right here. And just to do that, as you see there, I just right click down here. Oop, not on the USB, on the network. Right click on network adapters, then change adapter 1 to bridged. Okay, and then you're probably going to want to reboot your virtual machine. Hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Remember, if you did enjoy it, hit that like button. Just allows me to gauge which videos you guys really do enjoy. If you've had a look through a few of my videos and you're like, you know what, I like this guy, go ahead and hit the subscribe down below. Used to be up above. Why they moved it, I'll never know, but hit subscribe. If you want to leave me a private message, if you don't want to leave a comment in the comment section, you can either do that on YouTube, just send me a private message, and if it's a good question or something that I can actually answer, because some of you guys want me to tell you how to hack your friends and stuff, which I can't really do because obviously that's illegal and I don't want to go down that route with this channel. If it is a good question, I will answer it. Also, you can do that over at the forums, DemmSec.co.uk. Send me a private message over there. Register over there if you want to share something with the community, or just read up on some of the stuff that some of our community members like to post on there. Some awesome content. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. So I hope you enjoyed that video. On the left there I've got another one of my hacking videos. That's actually from the beginner hacking series. It's actually how to perform something called pivoting, where you can actually use another machine to basically hack through. It's a really interesting video. If you don't already know how to do it, I really recommend going ahead and watching that. On the right there's well, my gaming channel, and the video playing is actually a little crisis-free Predator bow montage. I would really love it if you guys went over and subscribed. I really want to push this gaming channel because, well, I love gaming as well as hacking, and if you guys love gaming, you should really go and subscribe over there. Just click on the right there and that'll take you right to that video. Remember to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.